That's all it's doing. And it's using this training data. That's why it's so important to understand what happens in the data sovereignty of AI. You release the right to say they can't use it for training.
Hey everyone, today I sit down with Dan. We talk all things related to AI, data leaks, deepfakes, interesting stuff. Let's get into it.
If they're buying a book that you could buy in print, but is not licensed to be used.
That's like you watch a sporting event, and it always says you cannot, unauthorized whatever's of this game or this event can be done without express written consent. Same thing.
Same thing.
You cannot use the Super Bowl. You cannot record the Super Bowl and then use that to train the model.
I feel like, are they not all doing something like that though?
They do it on public data, but it has to be public data.
Okay.
Yeah, that actually is a big piece of the whole thing.
They specifically, allegedly specifically
used
took data that they were
used data they did not have the rights to use to train
the model.
Yes, that's why it's so important to understand what happens in the data sovereignty of AI.
Yeah.
For like business data, you upload a document to ChatGPT. That document, if you don't have a paid account, and even if you did have a paid account, terms and conditions could say otherwise. If you upload a document to ChatGPT and you have a free account, they have the ability to use that data for training their model.
You're feeding it freely into the model, therefore they have it.
You gave it to it.
Yeah.
You release the right
to use that.
Signing the term and condition. You release the right to say they can't use it for training the model. Now, there are some AIs where they explicitly say your data is never used for training. Terms and conditions dictate that. That's safe.
That's safe.
Obviously, at the end of the day, can you really prove that they did or didn't? I don't know.
Well, that's what I wonder.
Yes, you could, but it would be such an expensive battle.
Well, and if they have trillions of tokens, how would you do you go in and search for everything it was trained on?
Look how much money is in AI, though. If you think about it from the standpoint of there's so much dang money that, of course, they're going to have records of what they used to train the model.
Yeah,
they're continuous pre-training, and so their base model training.
Yep,
that's where that data would be injected in the model most likely. It's a massive data pipeline. It would be trillions of tokens, like you said. It'd be massive. It'd be huge to sort. But there'd be a law firm that would pay every penny in the world to look through it to make sure that they could get you with the amount of money that's in AI.
Well, and almost if it's a trillion tokens, there's got to be so much overlap between all of that training data, right? It's not like, hey, we found a trillion over here, we found a trillion over here, and they don't match up, right?
Oh, of course there's overlap. Yeah.
Well, so
all the ands or is or the.
Yeah.
You mean like the same book in there twice?
No. What I mean is,
that gets
if ChatGPT is trained on this data,
Mm-hmm.
and Gemini is trained on this data, and 95% of it is the same data, how different are they really?
At their core?
Yeah.
But no, really though, if you look at an AI model at its core, what it really is, and I think I was telling you this the other day, it is a fancy autocomplete engine.
Yes.
That's when AI comes, when it's done being baked in the oven and the timer goes off and they pull it out, before you ever see it, it is just an autocomplete engine. All it does is it parrots back to you exactly what you ask.
It's predictive text. When I'm typing in an email and it says you're trying to complete this word,
that's all
it's doing the same thing just on a big scale.
That's all it's doing. And it's using this training data. So that could be books, that could be data from the internet, that could be whatever. That's all it's doing.
Yeah.
When you take it out of the oven and then you put the frosting on it, you take let's use the cake analogy. You take it out of the oven, you put the frosting on top. That's when it starts being able to use that encyclopedia, that wealth of knowledge, or whether that knowledge is accurate or not, right? You can put false knowledge in an AI and it doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
It's all based on its grounding as training data. Yeah. When you take it out and you go from a base model to an instruct-tuned model or something like that, that's where it starts being able to apply the knowledge. And that's how it starts being able to talk back to you. Instead of just regurgitating the next phrase or the next sentence that it thinks it should tell you, it now understands
interact
English.
with you.
You can interact with you, and it understands how to apply the knowledge that you've given it.
Yeah. So is it the actual model itself that will distinguish them, or is it the training data? Or maybe a combination
between those two.
Well, what I'm saying, okay, so you're saying the core of the data, right? It might have a whole lot of overlap.
Oh yeah.
So I would question then, all right, is it the 2% of non-overlap that Gemini has over ChatGPT or Claude has, or is it the way it's implemented, right? The interaction I have with it is trained in a different way.
I bet you there's a lot more than 2% because they don't release their training data, right? On Anthropic, ChatGPT.
But across trillions of tokens, how much differentiation are they going to get?
So here's a good reference.
Yeah.
I am building a model at home. And I took a 1,700-page PDF, which is a compliance standard model. I'm sorry, actual model. Like it's the NERC compliance model.
Okay.
The entire NERC dictionary.
Yes.
It's 1,728 pages.
Yeah.
It equated, which was a big document, just one version of it. It equated to 1.2 million tokens.
Okay.
So there is a lot
of,
trillions of tokens sounds like a lot, and it is a lot.
But you're saying a trillion tokens might only be...
It's a chunk. It's a good chunk.
Less than 10% of the internet.
But the overlap is different. Plus, they have their own internal data that they train it on that is not public data, right? Open source models are generally trained on public source data, things that can be found in Project Gutenberg.
Deep Cogito, open source. It's trained on public data.
Yeah, I don't know if they publish what their training data is, but I believe it's 100% public data.
It's all public.
It's not private. Okay. Whereas we don't know, but we don't know, but we know that Google is using private data to train their model. We know that ChatGPT is using private data to train their model. We know that Anthropic is using private data to train their model.
Yeah.
They don't release the weights. We don't know exactly what it is. But even I think so both Gemini has Gemma models. Those are their open source variants of their models. And ChatGPT also has GPT OSS, which is their open source model. They don't even release the training data for those models. Yeah, I don't think. I'm fairly certain neither of them have ever released their training. And Microsoft even has their own AI models. Generally speaking, we talk about Copilot. Copilot is based on OpenAI, but Microsoft's AI has their own variant of AI models that they've released, and they don't release their training data either. So it's all privately held. So it could, but it also is a mixture. There's been tons of studies out there that show that 85% of this data set plus 10% of this data set plus 5% of this data set is vastly superior to 75% of this data set, 20 of this, and 5 of this. And
so if you get a higher quality, a pure data set, then
the better the data set, the better the model, right? And
the garbage in, garbage out model. Yeah, better it is better. Okay. So besides the data set, though, what will distinguish them? Because is it strictly data set? Because I think what I talked to you about a couple of days ago was I watched a video that was 2 months old, and it said ChatGPT was the best for X. And then I had a friend who called, and he said, no, that's Claude. And I said, well, this is only 2 months old. And he said, that's way old news. And you agreed with him.
Yeah, I do.
But why, though? Is it now they've put so much better data into their model that it's suddenly become better, or they're doing something different besides just the training?
Yes. All of the above.
All of the above.
Why do you think there's billions and billions and billions and more billions of dollars in it? Like the reality is they're doing so much every day.
Okay.
So like if we're going to talk about Anthropic or Claude, Claude's really kind of the agent side of it, right? That's more the application. That's what they name the AI agent. Okay. I would say the biggest change in all of the models recently, but the biggest differentiator in more recent history is actually the change from using static, right? Which is what the model knows.
Okay.
When they added in reasoning, there was a significant uptick, right?
So when you say static, you mean the data doesn't change. It's
so any transformer model, which is what the T in GPT stands for, but also any transformer model. Almost all of these models that you see right now or that you come into contact with, those are all transformers-based models.
Okay. Well, and what does that mean?
That's just the architecture. That's how
the architecture. That's the name of the architecture.
Yeah. Okay. So any transformer-based model has static weights, meaning the training data is embedded into the model. So every time you clear the memory, your context window, every new chat, it is static. It is starting back from the exact same field that it was the last time.
By static,
they're always static. They don't shift.
It stays exactly the same for every conversation.
Exactly. It's always every time you hit new chat, it's a new chat.
Yeah.
Well, what's changed recently is they've added kind of that more agentic approach where it has memory now. And the model doesn't. At the end of the day, the model is identical to the way it was, but they've added a lot more to it. Not really. I mean, obviously, they've updated models too.
So you could almost remember, you were talking about marketing over here, and now you're talking about business strategy.
absolutely.
on this day, and now you're asking about
long as you're logged in.
advertising. Well, with this conversation with marketing, I'm gonna keep that in mind while I give you
Exactly.
yeah.
It'll use that as
advertising.
additional context. Now you have to opt into that. You can turn that on and off.
Okay.
But it will actually
I'm
bring
guessing
that
it costs.
forward.
That's why you turn it on. Right?
I mean, it can use additional context window.
Okay.
It doesn't really cost anything. It just depends. You know, certain plans probably allow it, some certain don't,
Yeah.
right? If you clear your cache and cookies every time you use it, then no,
Then
it's
it
not
wouldn't
gonna
work out,
gonna know. But if you're logged in, it saves your chats across devices. Yes, it's gonna know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the biggest change recently has been the addition of tool calling, if you will, searching the internet, doing the research. That wasn't really around for a long time.
Was it not? Because I feel like that's how everybody uses ChatGPT. Instead of typing into Google, I type, "Hey, who did this?" and it gives me more context.
But it only worked for data that was in the training data set. That only worked if it was pre
Which makes
December
sense.
of 2023 or
Because
whatever.
sometimes I would ask it something and says I don't have information
Or give you old
on
data.
This. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, by default, I think you can turn it on and off depending on the model, once again, or the interface, whether ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. But by default now, it can actually go out and search the internet for new data.
All of them can? Because that was
Almost all of
the
them
idea
can.
behind Perplexity, right? The search engine AI.
Yeah,
But you're
almost all
saying
of them can now.
Gemini can't. Well, Gemini's Google. You're typing into Google, you get Gemini. So
Yeah, but they all can search now. Almost all of them, obviously, not all, but they all have a little web search icon in there. Click the web search, and bam, it can go search for context it doesn't
looks at
know.
it. Okay.
So especially if you ask her for recent events, and so that's probably what's made AI models. Obviously, there's been advancements every day, but that's really made AI models more useful because now the context that you give the model. From your conversation or whatever, plus maybe your history, if you let it pull in its history, it can use that history to build that profile of you. It takes the context of the conversation you just gave it, you're just having with it right now, and then it can go search for data.
Well, so that's interesting, actually, because how does that work with search engines like DuckDuckGo, right? That is all about, hey, things are private. And now we're opting in to say, take as much information of me as you possibly can and use it in every interaction that you have with me, right? We are opting for the least private use of our data, right?
Yes and no. I mean, you go read the terms and conditions of Google Chrome, and then you can start complaining about privacy.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I know Google's private, but I'm just saying there's a whole platform around privacy. And we might be doing that in search engines and then going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, I really like this. Can you give me an idea of X, Y, or Z?
Well, and that's why we really have to focus on understanding the terms and conditions of of the tool you're using. Yeah. It doesn't matter which it is. All the big guys now do pull. You can reserve the right to use your chats for training data if you're using a free version. All the big players in the game do. Yeah. They all say that. They all say right in it, we reserve the right to use your training data for additional model enhancements, et cetera, in the future. What that really means is documents you upload might become anonymized. They're not going to give it your W-2 or something, but it might be anonymized, but the document itself could become part of a training regimen in the future. And so that's one of the more important things as we get down this road of using AI more and more in business, because guess what? It's here to stay. We really need to be aware of the terms and conditions, and that's where paid AI accounts come in. You know, your Gemini Pro that you've paid for, or your ChatGPT,
that's
or your
to keep things
Claude.
private. You leave my stuff alone.
All of those allow you to opt out
from
using your data as training, or explicitly say your data is never used for training. And that's the important part. So to your point about using the search engines and stuff like that, actually DuckDuckGo is actually used in some of those some of the open source search.
You mean like if I ask it to search, I ask the AI to search, it sometimes uses DuckDuckGo for the search engine.
So it depends on what you're using, right? So in general, the open source tool calling can use DuckDuckGo. It can use API-based search. It can use true Google search. Heck, I've got one that can launch, that it can actually launch a VNC window. So you can connect to a computer and it can control a computer. It can launch a VNC browser window that it can control.
Doesn't know any better? That sounds
so
scary.
cool.
That's
you have to allow it to do it. You have to set it up to do it. You have to give it the right conditions to do it.
Sure. But that still means it's still doing it, right? It's still controlling my computer and what's it thinking, right?
It's not thinking about anything. It's thinking about the task.
I'm saying
thinking about the task you gave
that's how they might think, right? I get what you're saying, how the model works, but to somebody else, well, the computer's thinking. Terminator's coming. Look what it's doing to my computer right now.
If you look at what a model is, you realize pretty quickly, if you break it down just into what it is, you realize pretty quickly that it cannot be Terminator.
Yeah.
An agent could build the model into Terminator. An agent could build a robotic dog that operates a gun, but
hey, I'm telling you, that could happen.
See,
you take Boston Dynamics and you put an AI into there, and
we're gonna have to cut this part out.
Just saying, and then put some armor on there. That is a terrifying scenario. That is very likely to happen.
No, but overall, AI is not Terminator. It can't be. Look at how it's designed. Now it can be an absolute, just like any technological advancement, the computer, social media, etc. It can be amazingly good. It can also be amazingly terrible. An AI that was trained on with implicit bias could be bad. An AI that is trained on just factually inaccurate data could be bad. Look at some of the models that have come out of more oppressed countries, where maybe they have big firewalls or something. And
DeepSeek, is that what you mean?
Well, I'm just talking about Chinese models in general. Okay. There are some well-known things that you can ask Chinese models that they will just not answer, that are factual in nature. They won't answer them based on bias.
Sing praises to certain individuals within the Communist Party.
Maybe. I don't know that they do that as much, but in general, right, they have bias that, but then they could probably argue the same thing, that your Geminis or your ChatGPTs have Western bias. And I'm sure that your Mistral AIs, which isn't on your list.
No, it's not, but
Mistral.
I did see something about that. I just never heard about it. So what is it?
I like Mistral. They're neat. They're, I believe they're French. They had some very unique AI earlier on. They're still around. They're still there, but they're different. They have just some different models, but I'm sure they have a European bias. So arguably, they all have some level of bias.
Yeah.
But that could be really bad, right? Especially when we start using AI for more advanced use cases. I've seen some AI out there that does that you can, as much as it's really cool, you could like watch this video and see if we're being genuine. And it does like
look at our facial tension, look at how we talk, and see if
and see if we're if we're being genuine, if we're just having a conversation, or if we're like, we're reading a script, and it does it like throughout the video, and then at the end it gives you a synopsis level, like, there's 37% chance that Dan is genuine. And that's
37% chance.
If that could be a really neat tool in a lot of things. It could also be a really bad tool if it doesn't have the training data to back up, and it just creates implicit bias. It
would almost make me think too, is that the same kind of tool that you use to discover a deep fake that is better than human detection, or is there something else, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of deep fakes are actually watermarked.
Really?
They're watermarked. So deepfake audio a lot of times is watermarked.
Yeah.
So if humans can't hear it.
Well, and that's fine, but that's like saying a lot of guns are serialized, but people
you have to be able to analyze it.
That are going to commit a crime are willing to take that off, right?
Well, yeah.
People that are going to use deepfakes for things that we are afraid of
is
are
that
willing to not
a lot of
watermark
times
them.
deepfakes are actually discovered because of the
model used to create the deepfake is watermarked.
It watermarks the audio it watermarks that. But when I'm sure, and there are models that there are plenty that aren't.
Yeah.
Absolutely, something like that could potentially be used to detect deepfakes, or depending on what it is. Probably be a high profile individual that would have a custom tune for that type of detection. But then again, same thing applies. They could custom tune a model to create better deepfakes, and guess what? They're already better than they were 6 months ago, and they're better, and they were better than they were a year ago, and 18 months ago, and 24 months ago, and everything else.
And I almost wondered, I saw a video of a deepfake that was Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that the Earth was flat, and then he addressed that deepfake in his own video, saying, "This is a deepfake. Look how real it looks, but you got to spot it." But I'm not going to go look at a watermark if I see a video like that. And anybody that's just scrolling through shorts on YouTube or whatever else is also not going to. So whether it's watermarked or not, it's still dangerous.
What's it called? I think they call it AI slop.
Slop, yeah.
That's like half of all social media platforms now.
Yep.
Some of them are really funny though.
When you could tell it's an AI and you could appreciate the funny, even though you know it's an AI, I'm okay with that. But
like any that make fun of Tom Brady, I'm okay with that. No, I think it's definitely, so there's a lot of really cool use cases and a lot of really cool applications that actually are really good for humans.
Yeah.
But with everything, there's a negative. And the same concept, like I was talking about the honesty AI kind of thing, that trying to determine if you're legitimate or you're honest, or you're
genuine.
If you're genuine, that could also teach people to lie, because you just have to practice.
What's giving you the inputs of how it discovers.
You can look in the mirror and it says, "Hey, this user shrugged, or they did this. That's not a genuine look. They didn't make eye contact. Whatever." So, bam. It's like practicing in the mirror. It's like a lot of people, when they do public speaking or something like that, they practice, right? A lot of times, the old days, what'd you do? You practiced in the mirror.
You practiced.
Right? You looked at yourself when you did it. Same concept, except for now you have a coach telling you effectively, not exactly, but effectively telling you, well, you didn't look very genuine there, Bob. So I think that so it could be used for negative. That also could, same thing applies though. Could be used for good. I could see trial lawyers doing something very similar.
Yeah.
Think about them practicing their closing arguments or their opening statements, because that's all about how a human would interact with or take your, whatever you want to call it, your arguments.
Or better yet, having an AI. Sorry, now I'm just thinking about a business application. If I'm giving a presentation, or if I'm giving I'm never going to be a Steve Jobs on top of a stage saying this is the new product but if we're training a sales team, if we're training a technician, if we're training something else, hey, you're going to go in a room with this AI and you're going to pitch to it, and it's going to tell you where you're wrong.
Right.
And it's going to tell you where you're right. And then you're going to try again, you're going to try again. And now you're automating the training as if you yourself, this top salesperson, were in there with it. With
real-time feedback.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's some really cool applications, but arguably, do better salesmen, are those better for the end user? Maybe not.
It depends on how you train the salesman. Because if
that's the question.
If you're trying to push a used car on them and you don't tell them that the head gasket's about to blow, no, that's terrible for the end user. But if you have a superior model, but it's very confusing to explain, hey, this is how we're going to explain it to get them into a better spot in the future.
Now we're into the ethics of AI, which is, wow. That's really all there is to it, right? Because once again, it's based on the bias, it's based on the data.
Yeah.
If you have the sales AI engine that's training your salespeople, who's paying the bill for that? The people that either want the salesman to get more sales, or the salesman themselves.
Yeah.
So that's going to be implicitly biased on designing platforms and sales that convert so that they can make their money back.
Sure.
So that's where the ethics of AI came in, is that whoever's designing this application.
We've been doing that for thousands of years.
But we can do it in real time very quickly.
Yeah.
Now versus it used to take years. I mean, how long does it take to train to actually become effective as a salesperson?
Well, it's the experience that makes you effective as a salesperson. Not me watching a video of someone selling and then trying to replicate it is not going to do.
Now this can actually operate as that.
Yes, exactly.
That antagonist.
So you're just making someone better at the job that they're going to learn anyways. Is that really
okay? So,
where's
we
the
create shady salesmen faster.
Okay.
We are a shady salesman factory.
See, we have two different ideas in our mind. I'm just
looking at it from the standpoint of but that's how the public would see it, right? I think
that's how the critical public would see it. I think there's plenty of people that say, okay, well, they're going to do it anyways. That's part of the job description. Learn sales. Okay, this is just a tool to make them a better salesman.
I agree. I think if the appropriate guardrails and ethics were instilled in the model and in the regimen, the training regimen, and the program itself, yes, it's an amazing tool.
Yeah.
I think I could see it being used. I have ideas of AI in education. Obviously that's a really taboo subject.
It's true. Let's throw education and sales out of it. I'm training a doctor now, right? No one's going to complain about a doctor having the proper training for performance surgery or having bedside manner or something. You know?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a doctor standpoint, that's very different because and AI is just doing math in its head all the time. That's all it does, right? It doesn't even understand the or if or then. It knows a number. It has an integer representation of what.
Is the thing in binary the same way a computer does?
Not necessarily binary, but it's based on.
But it's still math.
Yeah, it's based on math vectors,
Yeah.
and so. This is where it becomes interesting, because I think arguably a doctor does not know everything. Actually, every doctor would
arguably, I think that's factual.
I think
to a doctor that might not be factual, but to the rest of the world,
it's actually the nurses that know everything. I mean, no. So a doctor doesn't. They cannot know. Nobody can know everything.
Yeah.
They can be very good on a subject, but they can miss things, or they have implicit bias.
Yes.
A doctor does have implicit bias, which is effectively, like when you look at a model, it's context bias.
Yeah.
If they are preconditioned to see this thing. If they see the indicators for it, they're going to see this thing first, even if it's not the right. Hence why people are misdiagnosed.
They're going to go for the first 10 rashes that they know of, rather than this weird thing. Oh wait, were you just in Southeastern China or something?
That's where the AI actually has some super interesting applicability. It's not going to replace doctors. Don't self-medicate. Bad choice. Yeah. But that's where AI.
You're dying again.
Yeah, again. You already died twice this week. I don't know what's going on. No. But that's where it's really interesting, is that it can operate almost like what I would anticipate, like where a PA used to come in, like a physician's assistant, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They would, I feel like in the old days before modern times, but the physician's assistant would work with the doctor very closely, right? They would bounce ideas off each other, almost as colleagues or as peers, similar. Mm-hmm, but it's mentor-mentee style.
Yeah.
This can operate a similar role as that, when all the data is in there, it can look at points that maybe the doctor has blinders to just from personal bias, and the doctor can push that away. Yep, nope, I thought about it, or I see it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's definitely some applicability there for not to replace a doctor, not to replace a lawyer, not to replace those functions, but to augment them.
Yeah.
If we can augment a lawyer or a doctor's work,
that brings us full circle around to augment a salesman or augment a whatever you want, right?
Yeah, augmenting. I have no issue augmenting. That's training. I'm not saying an AI needs to train the doctor.
Oh, Okay.
I'm saying they augment. They're instead of just having like, I'm sure 20 years ago, 30 years ago, before we all had the internet everywhere and at our fingertips, a lot of times doctors went back to books. Yeah. They had to.
No,
right? I mean,
sure.
you know that happened 20, 30, even 20 years ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago, we had a set of encyclopedias at home. Okay, it might have been like 30. But still, we had a set of encyclopedias.
10 years ago, you just hadn't thrown them out. 20 years ago, yes.
That's how you got like facts, before the internet, before search engines and things like, or you ask somebody.
Yeah.
This is the same thing. It's phone a friend, but but it's been trained on, maybe you have a dermatologist, and it has been trained both visually from visual representation of images, but also trained visually, but also trained, by language on this data.
So that's a great use case, actually. You said dermatologist, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's doctor, medical, right? Mm-hmm. That is a specialty within everything that ChatGPT might have in its digital head, right? Technically, medical is one section of that. Now you go another layer down, dermatology. Is there a medical AI? Will there be a dermatology specific AI?
Oh, I mean, you could build it pretty easily if you had the data, right? Does it exist today? Probably.
Or do I go into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is my dermatology project. Let me give you all of the parameters around how I'm going to interact with you. I only want dermatology. Or is that an inefficient use of a trillion token model?
So actually, we were just looking this up earlier. I think they said you have to look at it on the kind of like the global scale. What did it cost to train? Not cost. To train GPT-5, it was 200,000 H200 or H100, whatever GPUs.
200,000
GPUs. So
anything H coming from NVIDIA
anything
is going to be pretty pricey.
Well, anything, as one of our clients says, anything times a small number, any big number times a small number is still a pretty big number. And so it's a lot there. So no, that wouldn't be an efficient use. However, all the models, they have the ability for you to fine tune them to your specific data set.
Yeah.
And so depending on how you fine tune it or how you train it, it would allow you to adapt Gemini or ChatGPT, or really, which is just like GPT-5 or 4 or 4.0 or whatever, to a specific use case.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you were doing dermatology, you'd need a vision capable model to do that. You would need a ton of data.
Yeah.
But this mole, is it malignant or benign or whatever, or this or that lesion or whatnot? There's so many things. Same thing with X-rays or diagnostics or radio. Any of those imagery type applications, they could be used and be really helpful for maybe pre-processing or post-processing or just kind of a verification. So do they exist today? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, to an extent they do exist, but they're not really out there. But, like Law AI does. Law AI has a couple of different AI engines.
They have their own
that are specific. And what they are, I'm not going to say which necessarily, but what they really are is they are adapted. They have an adapter. So whenever you do a fine tune of a model, you've taken the base weights and then you've adapted them. Think of it more like you have your normal sunglasses, your glasses that you wear, and now you've swapped those out for different lenses.
Yeah.
So the model's the same fundamentally, but now it sees it through a different light, if you will.
Yeah.
But you've adapted a model, and so they've adapted even frontier models. Frontier models being Gemini or any of those. They've adapted a frontier model specifically to perform AI legal tasks.
Well, is that the best way of doing it, or maybe the most efficient way? Because
most efficient.
I think it was you. Oh, so maybe most efficient for the person creating the AI, but
for the end user, most efficient for the end user. Because if you think about it, remember, it's just to train something that has the background knowledge the size of GPT would require you to have hundreds of, probably close to hundreds of trillions of tokens of data to train it on, which you're not going to have. But then also,
weren't you saying though that more data will dilute the quality of the AI? So if I give millions of pictures of moles into an AI, say, great, now this thing is very specialized to moles, but then I start throwing in legal stuff and whatever else in there, it dilutes the quality of the first.
More or less, yes.
So how would that be the most efficient way of? Maybe that's the least. Maybe it's not inefficient. Maybe it's not.
It's efficient from a dollar standpoint.
From a dollar standpoint, but not from an accuracy standpoint.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. No, a base model trained exclusively on that subject matter.
Yeah.
As long as it had enough of other things in it to help it stay at least semi-rounded, so it doesn't just become a regurgitation engine, is the most efficient use. You could pack that model much smaller.
Yeah.
However, from a dollar standpoint, it may cost you $10,000 or $12,000, maybe $15,000 or $20,000 to train your customized GPT-5. Whereas it would cost you
just using.
Well, so here's a good example, and this is a real story. I recently trained a 240 million parameter model, which is this big. I mean, we're talking a little guy
in terms of what Geminis and Claudes are doing.
Yeah, I mean, those aren't even published, but the understandings is those are in the trillions of parameters of models. So a 240 million parameter model is nothing. To run it on, I have a decent AI setup at home. To run that model, to run that training regimen on my pretty decent AI setup at home, 240 million parameters, very little. It was 31 days is what it was going to take
to train it. Oh, okay, that's a while.
Yeah, and that was only 5 billion tokens.
Okay,
and it was going to be 31 days.
Wow. Okay,
so. Just think about the scale then. So from an efficiency, and then the other option was that I could train it in a few days on an H200 GPU, but that will cost me $3 an hour or whatever. I don't remember exactly how much it costs, right? But
it'll be a few $100s.
It'd be a couple $100s to do that, but that's a super tiny model.
Yeah.
Versus, but I could do it in 3 or 4 days or whatever it was, right? A significantly smaller amount of time. But it costs more.
Yep.
And but that's a tiny model. Now extrapolate that even to say 100 billion parameter model. So then we go from 240 million, that takes 30 days on consumer hardware.
It becomes exponential at that point.
Yes, and so that's why it's way more efficient for you to fine tune.
Yeah.
Because that was a full model training, but I can fine tune a model on a lot smaller of a budget.
That would create the question then: how much dilution actually takes place when you're putting that much data in there? Because if for you, I don't want to say.
Well, this was a base
hobbyist
model.
Yeah, this is a base model. Okay. Before, let's say I run a law firm,
Mhm.
and if I can take 3 months and whatever the cost is for 3 months to train a very specific legal-only AI model, but that gives me an extra 5% out of each lawyer, well, I'm going to hit my ROI, and after a couple of years, I'm making a lot more money, right?
Maybe. I mean, think about it. I mean, it depends on how big the model, because the model has to, in general, there's rules.
Yeah.
Rules are meant to be broken. But there are rules about there are guidelines on how big a model has to be to actually perform a function, you know? And so depending on what the function is, that depends on the size of the model. But then as the model grows, there's also the token parameters you have to give it. So that's the issue, is that I could go build a 100 billion, or I could go build a 100 billion parameter model tomorrow.
Yeah.
And give it 25 tokens. It won't be able to do anything but repeat you 25 tokens. But you could do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rules we have to really think about as we design these.
But if I give it pure data going in, how much better is it coming out? Like, the way I understand how computer chips are made, the purity of the silicon is what determines how efficient the CPU actually is. Is the same thing with this, that maybe it might cost me a couple $1,000s, but if the purity of the data going in, I can control that for my law firm, makes me that much better as a lawyer, I'm going to make it up in...
You need noise.
You need noise,
which would be non-relevant data. Because if you think about it, if you just fed this, let's stay on the law firm side. Yeah. If you just fed it briefs and you just fed it case data, it's going to only speak lawyer. It's only going to speak briefs, right? And you ever read a brief? You know, and for the layman, it's not great. Maybe it would work in a law firm setting, but it most likely wouldn't understand the requirements of the law, and it wouldn't understand plain natural language.
It would need a little nuance in there to be able to give nuance back out. That makes sense.
So it would really be difficult to do. You would need some more data in there for it to really do it. It may work, but that's the question. Is who's willing to take a $5 million gamble?
Would it be $5 million?
Oh God! To train a model that big, yeah.
A personalized model for just we're
talking about base model. You're going from ground up, only law, only legal. Yeah, it would probably be more than that.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I mean, 240 million parameter model.
50 grand or something, but you're saying no. It's
I think so.
100 times that.
Who was it? This was like, I don't want to say a breakthrough, but. So Hugging Face, right? They're the company that puts out a lot of models. They do a lot of open source model stuff. And they released their small LLM models. Small. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I think it's supposed to be a play on small. But so they replaced, I think they put out like 500 million parameter, 600 million parameter models.
Yeah.
And I believe, you can look up, we'd have to look up the white paper to know for sure. It cost them $250,000 to train those models. They are arguably overtrained. They probably pumped a little extra tokens in there over the normal standards.
Okay, well then take $25,000 off. It's still a lot of money.
Well, that's $250,000 for a 500 million parameter model.
I know you're saying you've overpumped it, but you're still talking.
Yeah. So we're talking. Yeah. If you want to extrapolate that into a model of usable size for a specific profession, you likely are talking. I mean, you just extrapolate that. So 1 billion parameters, $500,000. So you to do something like legal, you'd really start at like 30 billion parameters.
Yep.
So we're talking at least 15 million. Maybe there's some economy of scale there, and also time.
Yeah.
You know, and so it would also take a significant amount of time. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up again. But I think those small models also took like 30 days on dozens of GPUs running. Yeah. So not only are you have to compile all of this legal data, which is expensive to do, from the standpoint of you have to get it ready for ingestion. Then you have to train the model, and then you have to test the model, make sure it works like you want it to. Then you have to convert it to a chat model. And now maybe it works like you want. So maybe you're taking a $10 million gamble. Yeah. That's why it's much more economical to fine tune either a open source model, if that's how you want to do it, or if you're doing private AI, an open source model, or to fine tune a GPT, a ChatGPT, or a Gemini, or an Azure model, or something like that.
Well, so how's that spell out the future then? The future then is one or two dominant players, the way Google dominates search engines, or is it AIs are now going to become you'll have your own AI, right? Parker Law Firm. Well, this is the Parker Law Firm AI, and versus Morgan's Law Firm. This is the Morgan Law Firm AI.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's just semantics, right? I mean, it depends on what the underlying architecture or design really is. You know, I mean, I think that it will continue to there's too much of a push in the open source movement area for AI, and also anybody can build their own AI, right? You can go sit at a computer and build your own base
right
model.
Now you're saying it's too expensive to.
It is
to do it on a practical scale.
On a practical scale, yes, but you can build your own AI, and sooner or later, some philanthropic effort will give
some way the market's gonna bring the cost down enough that we're gonna be able to switch over from being dominated by the top 5 into we all have our own.
Exactly. So I think that, yes, the frontier models are the leading right now, but honestly, some of the open source models have definitely, they've pushed the envelope, I think, and so it's made it really cool.
Gotcha. Well, so with all these then, how do I use them? I have ChatGPT, I have Claude, I have Gemini, I have Perplexity, I have Copilot, I have Grok, I have DeepSeek. Maybe not DeepSeek. But between all of those, it almost sounds like, well, Bitcoin was the first. I guess I'll invest in Bitcoin. Well, ChatGPT was the first. I guess I'm using ChatGPT. But it sounds like that's not the best way of doing it.
You have to try each one, right? You need to determine for yourself because a lot of the differences, we kind of alluded to. There's a lot of overlap. Maybe not as much as we say. We don't know, but there's a lot of overlap in the models. So a lot of it is in the differences of how it interacts with you, right? The newer versions of Claude are much more relaxed than, or of the Claude model. So we're talking, Opus or Sonnet. I don't really play with Haiku very much, but of those models, those variations of Claude, they're much more relaxed. I mean, they'll swear.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't been on Claude
and
enough
it makes you giggle.
to get that.
You're like, huh? But they'll swear, and so so it really does take some investigation on the user's part, because you can ask the same model, or different models rather, the same question, and while you might get the same factual answer, the way it gets to the answer may not be the same for you.
And that's what I'd wonder. You say you have to try all of them. If I were to type the same question into the 7 or 6 or however many I just asked.
There's a few questions you can't ask the Chinese model. So
they'll
say no. That didn't happen.
That was a fun one to throw in. We're not gonna. Oh no, let's do that. Does Mao Zedong look like Winnie the Pooh? What's gonna come out of there?
I have no idea. I've never tried that. No.
Apparently, supposedly, Winnie the Pooh has been banned in China because there's too much of a likeness between Winnie the Pooh and Mao Zedong. That's hearsay, but
once again, you can't really trust the Chinese models.
So.
You can't trust the models. So
okay, but a better question, right? Yeah. What is Donald Trump a good president? What am I going to get out of all of these? How different are they going to be? Are they going to be nuanced? Are they going to be biased? Are they going to be, you know what I mean?
Well, at this point, there's no objective. And honestly, that's always going to be a bias. What you'd get, you'd probably get, depending on if it can search or not, right? If you let the model search, you're probably going to get some semblance of fact. They'd probably pull in some polling numbers. They're probably going to pull in some economic data. They're probably going to pull in some of that. And then it's going to try to not bias you into an answer. It's probably going to give you some public opinion, but it's probably not going to answer the question objectively because it can't. Yeah. There is no objective answer to that question.
Yeah, there's not.
It doesn't matter. There's not until a president's probably been dead for hundreds of years can they really say if somebody was objectively a good president or not. Yeah. So I think from that standpoint, it's probably going to bring in a lot of data and it's going to try to let you get to your own solution.
Okay, I like that. That. But it would do it in a different way. So I have to feel
each one would be different.
Which flavor am I going to get? Right.
Yeah.